I always find interviews difficult because it forces you to analyze every action, every move. And if the longer you've been around, the harder it is to answer these questions because you've been through so much. But yet every interview expects you to condense it and give a really succinct answer as to where you are, where you were, what were your motivations, what does success mean to you, how difficult is it to do it in Singapore. I think ultimately what we just want to do is put all these things aside and just play, create, have fun, hopefully touch some people, and not look back so much.
Listening to stuff Leslie used to do before I even got to know him, and I like what I heard. And I guess when you like something, you kind of follow, you kind of try and keep in touch with that artist or band is doing. And as time goes by, sometimes your paths cross and you start doing things together.
We've always sort of been digging for inspiration here and there. It's just maybe with Time of Rebirth, with Blank Walls, with A Far Cry From Here, we were looking often to the West. We liked all sorts of old organs, old keyboards, synths that have a certain unique, special kind of sound. And then of course, of late, we've just been exploring more unique instruments in Southeast Asia because it's like so much of that. Not that we can play this stuff, but we always just kind of go into it from the sound aspect of things. Like, this sounds nice. Should we just try and see if we can do anything with it? Of course, it's an excuse. Every album, you give yourself an excuse to try out a new instrument because you're always searching for sounds or quality of sounds or tones that are different from the last album. Many of us are huge music fans. We may play this sort of music, but we may go home and listen to Paul McCartney or something like that. You can't get away from it. We love music, we love listening to music, we love listening to so much like different types of music, and then we get exposed to a lot of even like regional musicians who are doing like really interesting stuff. So all this just kind of infuses you with enthusiasm for certain things, and you don't think like, okay, this genre I want to cover that genre the next album. You just kind of pull from here and there, and everyone has their own sort of set of inspirations, and then you come up with something hopefully different. A fire Okay, so Blank Walls and Time of Rebirth were essentially the first two albums and probably the last time that Les would be writing songs and then giving it to us to kind of add on our own arrangement. After Blank Walls, it was A Far Cry From Here. At that point, I remembered that we all worked on one or two songs each. And then we just kind of threw ideas at each other and then we exchanged working sessions. We worked in Pro Tools. And then when it came to the fourth album, Dark Four, Les didn't even write lyrics until we got to the point of recording in Bergen. Then he started writing some lyrics and finalizing the thing. I like just seeing how 4 or 5 people could just come up with ideas and then we sort of just start building from there. And there's no fixed plan, there's no blueprint, it's just whatever happens, And then we start to tweak a little bit more when we're happier with the arrangement, and then we might junk something completely just before we record it or rethink something. We've done that a lot, even with Catacombs. I remember we completely changed some of the arrangements on Catacombs.
Talking about the local music scene and how bad it is doesn't change anything, So at this point in time, these questions are still asked and expected to be answered, like with a smile on our faces. It's ridiculous. Are people even in touch with what's been going on in the Singapore music scene? It's like asking the same question to the wall for 30 years.
The way genres are used or overused, especially subgenres, really sometimes looks and sounds totally ridiculous. So that's why I decided to come up with the name first before the sound. So this is this new genre that's coming up. It's not out yet. It's called post-core. So
Find it amusing, and also at times it's very creative of the writer to think these terms like well done. Then oftentimes it's just regurgitation. Someone else used that term, so they just use it for convenience. But ultimately, it's just bookshelf or just categorizing something for them. It's easier for them. But from a musician or creative person point of view, it really has no relation. Imagine if you think that today I'm just gonna sit down at this table and do harsh noise or sound art, then I think it's very sad if that's what's in your head, because you should be free to do whatever you want.
Today I'm going to be doing 2 hours of post-core. Practicing every day is just discipline. This, and my ears, they need practice. Otherwise, they're gonna go all creaky and rusty, And your body needs to be accustomed to it. Otherwise, you won't have the stamina to go through it.
The best analogy is like driving, for example. When you first drive, you're panicking about everything that you do. But once you get there, you don't think about what you do anymore. So in a way, like when we practice, it's kind of like that. We just want to get it into our muscle and just play. And then we stop thinking about what we need to press and all that and focus on the content itself, expressing itself.
Only when you can get into that zone of utter focus, concentration, and 100% in the zone, in that mode, then you can really feel that this is gratifying and you can push yourself even further. So I think that's the part that's kind of nice, because you really get to a place where it feels great to be so focused when you can get there.
All the 3 tours that we did happened to be very different ones, despite the fact that the first 2 tours were with Mo, a band from Norway. Touring with them had quite a bit of an effect on the way that we play music and see performance as well. I think for me personally, I think I've learned quite a lot just watching them and hearing them live. We learned from all these tours, and I think with that we shifted our configuration in terms of instrumentation. I think that's one of those things that happened as well. It went from 2 drums to just 1 drum kit, and then after that became sort of like a little bit more comfortable. First time I heard Observatory too, the one reason I really enjoyed it was because of Leslie's voice, how that gave character to everything. And similarly for bands like Pinholes, I don't know if I can call it a Singaporean sincerity, but just that characteristic, that charisma is there in the music that they do.
Could it be that he, like the singer for example, is not trying to sound like someone, a famous singer from some well-known band from the West?
You mean he didn't sound like Eddie Vedder?
Or Creed.
But very often that term is also being used to sell a scene. When you say a sound of a place, it can be the fact that, for example, the Liverpool sound. You would think every band would then have this like Beatles or Jerry and the Pacemakers kind of sound. But maybe there are other bands that don't sound like that as well. But those are the popular ones, so they're kind of selling it. Perhaps like in Singapore in the future, there'll be a group of bands that actually do sound the same somehow because they came from a certain studio. I mean, I have one example, maybe Snakeweed. The bands that record there, will have a certain sound.
Yeah.
And maybe in the future it will become the Singapore sound. It's just we're not saying it right now. Everybody's still asking the question. I think it's there in whatever shape or form, but
Or the Aboy TNT sound. Maybe we should do this, huh? Come up with the questions that pop up the most frequently from press and media. Number 1, top 10 list of most frequently asked questions. An FAQ for press and media.
What's your advice to others?
Yeah.
that's the last question.
That's the last one. So what do you think? What do you think of the local music scene? How many albums have you sold? How much did you spend on the album?
Was it a successful tour or album?
Do you think local bands are good enough? How hard is it to pursue music full-time in Singapore? All of these questions are important, and we would like to answer them, but they're not the only thing. How does the socio-political climate affect music making in Singapore, affect your group directly? How do you feel that your songs have any real relevance to life in Singapore? I think these questions might be a little worth considering. What did you have for breakfast? That's actually more interesting to me than what do you think of local bands?